Lobos, and a message from the band Steve Berlin. At any time, you can also make your donation at the donate link at friendsofjohnleopold.com. That's friendsofjohnleopold.com. As environmentalists, we are by definition optimistic. That's why we're supporting our friend and partner, John Leopold. Just some of the things that John has done over the past 12 years include a climate action strategy for Santa Cruz County, advocacy to establish the Climate Action Manager, which is now called the Recovery and Resilience Officer, an innovative response to sea level rise, legal action against the oil industry on climate change, the first fracking ban in the state of California, and leading the fight against plastics pollution. We are so fortunate to have as our first speaker our longtime champion, John Laird. As Santa Cruz mayor and council member, John led a campaign to get 26 communities to fight offshore oil by restricting onshore facilities, and he led the effort to get the largest boundary for Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. As a state assembly member, he led efforts for state parks and ocean protection, and as natural resources secretary, he formed a Western States Compact on ocean protection and an international coalition to fight against climate change. So I'd like to welcome our friend, the next state senator, John Laird.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that great introduction, and it is a pleasure to be here today. And let me tee off of what you just said a little bit, because right now we have the most existential environmental crisis of our time in climate change. And there are so many things coming from it. And we say all the time, about acting globally and acting locally. And so when we think globally, we're just looking at horrific things. Since the Industrial Revolution, the sea level has already risen 7 inches, and it's targeted to go at least double that in the next few decades. We're seeing fires all over California. We had 1 million acres burned in California in the 60 or 70 years before 1999, and we have one fire that's that big right now, and over 4 million have burned thus far this season, and we haven't gotten to the heaviest part. Our emissions are off the chart, and so we know that that there has to be global change, and the only way to do it is acting locally. And John Leopold has just been a textbook case of how you go issue by issue by issue and act locally against those global goals. You have mentioned some of these things, but in particular, if you look at fracking, which releases greenhouse gases into the air, puts more fossil fuel into the system, and has water that comes off the processing that is wastewater that is not good for further use. If you look at just that, the surrounding counties had to go to the voters. Santa Cruz County did it legislatively, and they did it because John took the lead. And it really makes a fundamental difference, and it really speaks, it educates people as to what the precise issue is. I talked about sea level rise. We did the science at the statewide level that really said what we expect at certain benchmarks between now and 2100. And then we did guidance, and we turned to the locals to figure out how to actually take that guidance and take it to the next step. That's where John has really worked to do an innovative plan and work with the Coastal Commission on its implementation. And it's not just that it will apply to Santa Cruz County, it will be a model for other counties to see how you can do it at the local level and make a difference, because we are going to face this up and down the California coast. We saw it in 2011 where the tsunami hit the Santa Cruz Harbor disproportionately. Well, it hit it at low tide before there's appreciable sea level rise. So being ready is something that we have to do, and it is what John has done. If you look at the issue of fire, John has been out ahead. on the ground. I did a town hall meeting with him over a year ago at the summit, where he has worked with neighbors that have organized themselves in a fire safe council with fire safe actions, because it's really clear that even way before the fire we just had, that we have to have people do defensible space, defend their property, really look in ways that we are going to have to live in a different way with fire. And John is on the ground with his constituents doing exactly that. And then the other thing that's worth mentioning is plastics. Santa Cruz was one of the first places to do plastic bans. Mark Stone was involved in it. John has taken it to the next step in his work. And really, this is one of those places where the locals led. The state couldn't get it done. And so we, through the Coastal Conservancy at the state level, did an environmental impact report statewide so local jurisdictions could enact bans much easier at less of an expense. And when it got to the point that there were over 100 cities and counties that had enacted bans, it finally became inevitable that we could get there to state. And then, of course, they referended it to the ballot. I signed the ballot argument along with Julie Packard. John was just in that all the way. He was in that as a political fight. He was in that with the local action. He's in that with local steps. So really, it's one of those things that this is no time for on-the-job training. It is really about looking at that existential crisis, looking at the daunting issues we face, and really working with somebody that's been hands-on on each of these issues and made a fundamental difference. And so I'm happy to be here to just make sure everybody knows exactly about John and what he's done. And I wish him well. And I'm happy to be in such great company today. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you very much for your continued leadership and for all that you have done for our community and for the world when we come to that. I just want to mention that I mentioned earlier that if you wanted to ask questions, there was a bubble, text bubble at the bottom. Actually, if you are an attendee today, there is a hand raise function at the bottom. So when John Leopold comes on later on, you'll have a chance to raise your hand, be recognized, and turn your camera on. So I'd like to now introduce an individual who really ignited the environmental movement in Santa Cruz as the attorney for Save Lighthouse Field. That organization convinced voters to reject a massive conference center there, and we now have instead Lighthouse Field State Park. As a county supervisor for 20 years, he wrote Measure J, which preserved prime agricultural land and secured growth control, and also through Measure C, established and provided for a way to measure environmental goals. Both of those measures were approved by voters. He also protected the North Coast, including a ban on oil drilling and mining at the Chitoni Costeries property on the North Coast, which later became a national monument. And he also led a statewide local government coalition that successfully fought offshore oil. After retiring from elected office, he ran the statewide Planning and Conservation League and Landwatch Monterey County. Please welcome our very good friend and mentor, Gary Patton.
Aha, I'm on. I'm Gary Patton, and as you just heard, I served for 20 years on the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors, and I really think I kind of know what makes a good supervisor. John Leopold is an outstanding supervisor, and I'm really happy to be here today to support John's re-election campaign and to urge you in advance of the final appeal, which comes at the end, to make a campaign contribution, or I hope, to make another one. It's important. My specialty on the Board of Supervisors was land use planning and growth management. In the first supervisorial district, the district John represents, that means above all else, neighborhood protection and neighborhood integrity. It means standing up for the neighborhoods against ill-advised developments, and it means bringing public amenities and services into this area. It's an urban area and it doesn't have a city council. It has John Leopold. Parks, sidewalks, bike safety improvements, public works projects that support the neighborhoods. All of those are vital in the first district, and John has done a terrific job delivering for the people he represents. Think about, and it boggled my mind when I heard about it, summer movies in downtown Soquel, and then the Haven, this park on Chanticleer, new, beautiful place that John made that happen. I've also worked with John personally on a development project issue to reduce impacts in a proposed new development that was really threatening to the neighborhood. Think about John's attention to mobile home park residents too, who are such an important part of the constituency he represents. You know, I represented as a lawyer some mobile home residents in John's district. The park owner, a big corporate entity located elsewhere, was just not responsive to the residents' very extremely legitimate concerns about fire danger. So they hired an attorney, and I went to John. Between the lawyer and the interest and involvement of John as the district supervisor, that corporation suddenly decided that they had better make those safety improvements that they should have made in the first place. I give most of the credit to John's willingness to get involved. The willingness of a supervisor to get involved on behalf of residents is what makes an outstanding supervisor. That's what happened there, and that typifies how John Leopold works for the people he represents. Just a final note, the ability to work with different groups to help resolve their differences in a positive way is also something that an outstanding supervisor can do. I am currently working with clients in another county to resolve conflicts about short-term rentals between the neighbors and those who own short-term rental properties. I'm having a lot of problems. You know, you should know this. The model in the Central Coast region for how to do that right is right here, John Leopold in the first district. I think I said it before, John is an outstanding supervisor. We are so lucky to have him. Now, next up is Sara Nelson, who is the executive director of the Romero Institute, a national law and policy center here in Santa Cruz. Sara's a Berkeley graduate. She was formerly the executive director of the State of the World Forum and the Washington, D.C. Christic Institute. She believes that climate change is an existential threat to the living systems of the planet, as of course it is. And Sara is responsible for three action initiatives to forge strategic solutions to this challenge. The Lakota People's Law Project with Standing Rock and other Lakota tribes, the Green Power Project here in our region, which has doubled the size of our Monterey Bay Community Power Clean Energy customer base, and the California Green New Deal, her biggest effort yet. Sara has years of experience in national nonprofit educational and organizing campaigns. She's here to support John. Sara, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Gary. Am I coming through technically? Okay, great. I'm so happy to be here, and thank you for that introduction. I am delighted to be able to speak about my positive experience with John Leopold. The first time I ever saw him, I was at a labor meeting, and there were big issues being discussed, and I saw him and I met him, and I thought, well, this is really cool. This supervisor goes into the community, attends the meetings that are really important to the constituencies. And then I saw it over and over again. I saw him appearing at many different events where people were really concerned about different issue areas. And then we experienced it ourselves. He was there when we were gathering people on the Lakota People's Law Project, and we brought in leaders, Lakota leaders from the Dakotas, to talk about what a challenge it was to come up against the pipelines there. the Dakota Access Pipeline and the Keystone XL, and how much they appreciate support from all over the country, people standing with them while they're on the front lines of dealing with the fossil fuel industry. He was there when we were working on the Monterey Bay Community Power Project, which did result our organizing with Hispanic communities led by Ben Eickenhart, who will be speaking later, and Daniel Nelson. That work did result in the doubling of the size of the base, the customer base of the Monterey Bay Community Power community, and was a tremendous collective effort by so many people, and it was so great to know that he as a supervisor was with us, understood the importance, and supported the entire thing. Now, lastly, we're working on putting a California Green New Deal together for California that would get us to carbon neutral in 10 years. And we want that to be an offering to all the other constituencies in the state. A full legislation, 600-700 page legislation that could be used also in other states or even countries, because we know that solutions now, we have to be putting our energy into solutions. We are out of time, and a 10-year solution for climate is appropriate right now. And what I'm so happy about is that John was there when we had a couple of our different major meetings on the importance of developing this Green New Deal, as well as the regional work that we're doing, that Ben is doing and will report on. And I can't tell you, this is a time in history where everything depends on what we do and how we do it together. And we urgently need courageous, strategic, thoughtful, skilled leaders to help us put into place the solutions that we know are there, but we haven't yet had the political will to make them happen. And John Leopold is one of these people. We are so lucky that he is here, because our region could become a model that could help other regions in the state when it comes to the environment. And that will only happen with the support of John and others like him. So I urge all of you who are listening to get out your checkbooks and write the biggest check you can to help him, and understand that our support for people like John is what is going to save the lives of our people and of the planet itself. Thank you. Ben Eickenhart, or Dan Sheehan, is going to talk more about the Green New Deal, and because he's leading this effort. He's a policy person. He's a graduate of Harvard Law School and Harvard College, and he's a constitutional attorney. He's litigated some of the most significant cases in the last 50 years, including the case that won the right for journalists to protect their sources, the Pentagon Papers case, the Watergate McCord case, the Wounded Knee amicus briefs of the ACLU. He co-founded the Christic Institute, a law and policy center that litigated the Karen Silkwood case, which stopped all private nuclear plants from being built after 1979. He litigated the sanctuary defense case and the Iran-Contra case that exposed the scandal and the illegalities of the covert operations enterprise. He's the president of the Romero Institute and is guiding the writing of the California Green New Deal so our state can become carbon neutral in 10 years. Danny?
All right. Thank you very much, Sara, and thank you. I'm here just for a couple minutes to add to the major names that have come forward to support John. John is, in fact, the go-to guy on the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors when you want to get something done about the environment. We've been in meeting after meeting with John, as Sara pointed out in the hinterlands. He's been at all the major meetings discussing these fundamental issues. And when we come up with something that we think needs to get done, we go to John's office. And John sits down with us, explains the entire lay of the land, and then moves forward with all the instrumentalities he has at his disposal as a longtime member of the Board of Supervisors. And he takes the positions of for example, getting the county to reverse this position and agree to hire a specialist that is going to be focusing on environmental protection for this entire area. He played a major leading role with us in expanding the number of people that are in the Community Choice Energy Alliance here. And he has taken the lead on making certain that, for example, that future purchases of vehicles for the county are going to be electric, and is going to take the position of supporting putting in electrical charging stations, et cetera, to try to increase the motivation on the part of people to have electrical vehicles. And he has also supported the policy now of any buildings that are being built on county land in the future have to, in fact, be completely electric to do away with any of the fossil fuels. They have to be refitted and built de novo. And he's a major supporter of the litigation that has been now initiated by the city here in Santa Cruz against the major oil corporations. Our Christic Institute and Romero Institute, that Sara Nelson is the executive director of, were instrumental in filing the major lawsuit, for example, against the Kerr-McGee Petroleum Corporation that owned the Kerr-McGee nuclear facility that Sara had mentioned earlier. We were able to stop the construction of all private new nuclear power plants in the entire country through litigation like this. And John is aware of the strategic value of litigation of this kind. And so he has been a major supporter of mounting and prosecuting this major civil litigation against the major oil corporations. So he is deserving of all of your support. He has all of our support, and that we want you to open up your checkbooks, write a check, help him maintain his standing on the council. He's got long time contacts, knowledge about all of these different areas. As John pointed out, it's not time to have somebody brand new, learning on the job. That's my alarm I've set for myself, and so that's my 3 minutes. Go out and support John, get people to vote for John, and help finance John's campaign. Great. Now I'm here to introduce Ben Eickenhart. Ben is the director of our Green Power Project at the Romero Institute. He was instrumental in building out the Community Choice Energy Companies membership all around the multi-county area here. He was a longtime field organizer for SEIU, the Service Employees International Union. He was the campaign field director for Senator Sheldon Whitehouse in Rhode Island. One of the leading environmental senators in the United States Senate now, was active with the Democratic Party in supporting the presidential campaign of John Edwards in Iowa in the primary campaign. And he is the centerpiece of the entire Green Power Project at the Romero Institute, and has been the major engineer, along with John Leopold, of building out the regional climate action plan to draw in several of the counties all through central California to have a coordinated plan for dealing with global climate change. He's the spark plug of our operation with regard to green power, and he's here now to show his support for John and to get you to help John become elected for his next term. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Danny. Can folks hear me okay?
We've got you, Ben.
Thanks. All right. So, I'm trying to think about what I would like to say about John. And I was thinking this morning that, the most challenging times are those that also teach us the biggest lessons. And for me, there've been a lot of lessons in 2020, but the biggest lesson is that every day we need to embrace big and bold solutions. Every day we need to eschew timidity and embrace audacity in resisting the forces that are threatening us. And embracing the big and bold solutions, for me, means supporting the re-election of Supervisor Leopold. For the last several years, as Danny said, I've been part of a coalition working to make California's Central Coast the leader in regional environmental policy. We want to see our region be one of the very first to achieve carbon neutrality. We want to be one of the very first to get off of fossil fuels, especially in light of everything we're learning about how bad natural gas really is in our communities and in our homes. And over the course of this work, John has been one of the first elected officials to embrace those sorts of big, ambitious goals. I'll give one example. Not too long ago, a mixed use project came before the Board of Supervisors. It was a project that would provide affordable housing and affordable healthcare to the community. And John led the way in pushing for that project to be carbon neutral. He initiated a motion. It was a successful motion that made the permits for that project conditioned on the developers making every effort to have the development be free of natural gas and to be carbon neutral. And he also made a statement and really, I think, set the tone for the county that developers that are looking to develop a project in the future should be ready to respond to those same sorts of conditions, and that developers should embrace being free of natural gas and being carbon neutral going forward. So that's the kind of leadership that I think Santa Cruz County needs. It's the kind of leadership that Santa Cruz County deserves. And I think it's the kind of leadership that 2020 is demanding of us. So I'm excited to support John's reelection. John, thank you very much. It's been a privilege for me to have had opportunities to work with you and to support you. Now it's also my great pleasure to introduce Pauline Seals. Pauline is a retired high school science teacher. She's a local resident and grandmother. She is very active, that's actually an understatement, with local climate action groups. And she's also a volunteer in climate education. So please welcome Pauline Seals.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
I don't think my video came on.
We can hear you, but we can't see you yet, Pauline.
Well, I keep clicking mine and it says the host has stopped it. So I'll just start talking while you figure that out. All right, maybe here's a click. There we go. All right. Thank you for the kind introduction, Ben. I agree with everything that's been said so far by all these expert long-term environmentalists. I was asked specifically to talk about climate justice. Well, for me, the climate movement has always been about climate justice because the poorer people of the world who've contributed next to nothing to the problem are already paying big time and will suffer greatly in the future. This is the kind of thing that John understands and works to address. In the town, we have Beach Flats. Of course, that's not John's district, but it's the first area around here that will be flooded by sea level rise, and it's occupied by poor Latino people. John, for the county, has set up a program which I listened to it in great detail. It sounded very fair and reasonable to me. Of course, it's not the same situation as Beach Flats, but the point is he's not afraid to address these things in the best way possible at the time and move forward. Other things, that in John's area, there are a lot of farm areas and farm workers. Farm workers are and will be increasingly suffering from working in excessive heat. That's the kind of thing that John can take to the Board of Supervisors and come up with regulations, because the farm workers themselves aren't going to protest. They're just going to get sick. Another point is our city, county hospitals and many other big businesses are staffed largely by residents from Watsonville, Salinas, and Hollister, who drive every day on Highway 1 because they don't have any choice. John's long-term commitment to the rail corridor will, hopefully not too far in the distant future, provide real public transportation for these low-income workers, which this will reduce greenhouse gases and relieve the congestion for people who continue to drive on Highway 1. I personally appreciate many actions John has taken including the first fracturing ban that's already been mentioned. Please vote for John. Please support him. I will now introduce Rachel Kippen. Rachel Kippen is the Executive Director of the O'Neill Sea Odyssey, which has provided free ocean-going science sustainability education for more than 100,000 low-income youth, mostly from Watsonville. Rachel has several environmental degrees and focused her graduate research on agricultural plastic waste. I recently heard a great talk she gave just last week as part of a plastic culture webinar, which included using reclaimed irrigation plastic tubing to create Hawaiian-style art projects. Please welcome Rachel Kippen.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you, Rachel.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you for that kind introduction, Pauline, and thanks for coming last weekend. Yay. I just want to start by saying, Pauline mentioned that Beach Flats is outside of John's district. And I think that all of us who work in environmental work understand that, regional and district lines don't really hold up in the environmental world, right? When you make protections and when you support protections for the environment, it's so much larger than any one district or even Santa Cruz County. And so the work that John is doing for our environment is really benefiting so many people. So it's an honor for me to get to be amongst such inspiring company. I'm going to talk briefly about environmental education and why I'm supporting John Leopold. First and foremost, environmental education, we want to be uplifting, right? But it can be very depressing. And so especially when we're working with our youth, having role models like John, who's passed significant legislation, and as you've heard, has really supported the fight against plastic pollution and initiatives to support a healthy climate. Those are things that we cling to as environmental educators, to be able to share with our students and say, look, we have evidence that we can do better and we have done better, and you can support someone like this leader and you can become someone like this leader. So that for me is just a really big reason behind my support for John. And then I think, understanding that environmental education has really shifted over the last several decades, getting its basis here in the United States in the 1970s, and education being something that I think formerly was looked at as putting information into students' minds, like their minds were a vessel or something. And now we're really understanding the intergenerational need to look to our youth and to their brilliant ideas and to support them rather than act like we have all the answers, because we certainly do not. And John as a leader is someone to me that's not stagnant in the way that he thinks. He's always open to new ideas and changing with the times. And as Pauline mentioned, our demographic here and our demographic in the entire country is changing rapidly. Over the next several decades, we will see people of color be the majority of our voters. They are already the global majority. And really seeing environmental education as something that's intersectional. John is an advocate for equity, for equality, for working against racism. John and Supervisor Coonerty introduced the idea that racism is a public health issue. That's something that he did this year to really fight systemic racism throughout all of our systems, including education. And we need someone who thinks like that. And then just a personal memory of something that John basically made happen. John was a huge advocate for the Boys and Girls Club in Live Oak, understanding that our youth need somewhere to go and receive mentorship and guidance and opportunity. And when I worked at Save Our Shores, we had a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club where we would go and provide educational kind of programming. And then they actually adopted Sunny Cove Beach, which John also helped ensure that the public has access to. And they did beach cleanups and they learned about the marine environment there. And that to me is just a really tangible example of the kind of work that he does here in our community. So thank you so much. And it is now my pleasure to get to introduce Katherine O'Day. So Katherine O'Day and I got to work together for a little bit over a year when she joined Save Our Shores, and she's been doing a fantastic job. She's been at the helm for 5 years now. That went fast. Under her leadership, the organization has placed more of a focus on its marine ecosystem literacy for the K through 12 academic program. It's taking its anti-plastic pollution advocacy to new levels, as I'm sure you've all seen, and it's integrated the mitigation of climate change ocean impacts to its mission, while continuing to conduct more than 250 coastal cleanups annually. Prior to joining Save Our Shores, Katherine spent over 25 years protecting our planet's natural resources while working for leading environmental organizations on both the East and West coasts. My privilege to introduce Katherine.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Rachel, for that lovely introduction. And I have very fond memories of the year we spent together at Save Our Shores. So thank you for having been there then and for the work that you're doing now. It's really great to be here with so many notables who fight for our environment here on the Central Coast of California and who are supporting John Leopold, supervisor. I want to just also thank everyone for tuning in. It's great to have you here as well. And you know, it's been really exciting to hear about all the many ways John has been a tireless champion for our environment. And so now I'm going to add a new dimension and talk about his to passing plastic pollution policies. So when I came to Santa Cruz 5 years ago, John was one of the first community leaders that I met. I really like John straight away. He's very personable, very friendly. He listens. You can tell he's engaged and cares about what you're thinking. And so I was really glad to learn that he happened to be my district supervisor. I live here in District 1. And as a district resident, I had many occasions to talk to John and learn about his past record regarding plastic legislation and to stay abreast of his current thinking and actions around plastics. Of course, as an environmental advocate and activist, I was really delighted to learn of John's leading role in the passing of both a polystyrene container ban and a single-use plastic bag ban, kind of around circa 2008 to 2011. All that work was going on. Because of John's support, Santa Cruz County was among the very first jurisdictions in the state to begin to regulate plastic litter, and he helped make California the first state in the nation to pass a statewide plastic bag ban. Because he is my district supervisor, I was also proud that he was the only supervisor who continued to stand up for this ban when in June of this year, the other supervisors voted to suspend the bag ban, even though the concerns related to COVID-19 were specious and had already been debunked by more than 120 infectious disease physicians and epidemiologists. I know that had to be frustrating for John, but you know, John can check off far more wins than losses in terms of mitigating plastics. Over the last 3 years, his thoughtful, balanced approach to addressing plastic pollution helped our county earn well-deserved recognition across the state and nationally for its leadership on plastics. In 2017, John supported a ban on non-recyclable and non-compostable food serviceware, including containers, beverage containers, cup lids, plastic straws, and plastic utensils, as well as a recent amendment to that ordinance that places a 25-cent charge on disposable to-go beverage containers, which is set to go into effect January 1st. In 2018, he voted for a ban on single-use plastic toiletry bottles used in the hospitality industry, which was then picked up by state legislators and became state law in 2019. Earlier this year, John championed a mandatory take-back program for disposable contact lenses, which is really important because studies show 1 in 5 users flush their used contact lenses down the toilet, where they eventually flow out into our bay and get consumed by marine life. Since I personally learned about plastic microfibers, which are now ubiquitous in the environment, I've been talking with John a lot about why I think these microfibers are one of the biggest threats to both environmental and human health. These contaminants shed from our polymer-based clothing and textiles, like our towels and our linens, our rugs, upholstery, curtains, and more, almost everything we have in our homes. In fact, billions of microfibers are released into the environment every day, and that was billions with a B, and most of that by washing machines. Scientists have found that they are prevalent and persistent in our air, in our soil, in our water, in our food, in our beverages, and in our bodies. I know from my conversations with John that he understands the urgency around this issue and is already working to find an economically viable solution to prevent those microfibers from entering the effluent of both residential and commercial washing machines. John is also responding to his constituents' interest in reducing seabird and marine mammals due to the intentional or unintentional release of gas-filled mylar and latex balloons. When these items end up on our beaches and in our bay, they frequently entangle wildlife or are mistaken as food and ingested. So in closing, I just want to say, not only on the plastics issue, but across the environmental arena and all the challenges that our planet faces, John has the sort of ironclad environmental bona fides he deserves. I'm confident when he is reelected as our District 1 supervisor, he will continue to be a great ally of and champion for our natural environment and our ocean paradise. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Gina Cole. Gina is the executive director at Bike Santa Cruz County. She's an avid cyclist with a talent for getting lost. And Gina is passionate about finding ways to get more people on bikes. Gina?
Good evening. Thank you, Katherine. Thank you for the great intro. I do get lost a lot, but I don't feel lost tonight. I feel like we are all in the right place at the right time to add our support to John Leopold. A big part of John's environmental advocacy includes supporting and promoting active and sustainable transportation options around the county. As a parent and as a cyclist himself, John realized pretty early on the importance of safe streets and accessible pathways for bike traffic, especially around schools. John has always searched for ways to find equitable solutions for funding the improvements that our county needs, whether it's better roads, which lead to less wear and tear on our bikes, on our cars, whether it's bike and pedestrian paths and bridges, whether it's improved public transportation. All of these are environmentally sustaining practices. You know, if you've ever rolled or run or walked through Arana Gulch on your way to work or on your way to work out, you are seeing the end product of many years of advocacy, many years of compromise. These multi-use trails that we have at our access now, this opening of 60 plus acres of green space in the center of our busy cities, our busy communities, is opening it to bikes, to folks using their feet, to folks with strollers, different other mobility devices. It's creating, for me, that calm space on my morning commute. I'm working from home now, but when I would ride from Watsonville to Santa Cruz, that little 1 mile stretch was about my favorite part of the day. And a large part of that is John's advocacy and his willingness to push for that and to support a place where we can step off the pavement, get out of the hustle and the bustle, even if it's for 5 or 6 minutes across the fish bridge and up the hill. It's also really important to note that John was very instrumental in the first green lanes being installed in Santa Cruz County. They were in District 1 down in Soquel Village on Soquel Drive. You know, we all know how busy Soquel is. It's a main thoroughfare. It really is. It's used by bikes. It's used by folks. It's used by people walking, biking, cars and buses. And it's amazing to know that that's where the many miles of green lanes got their start. We have a lot of really great bicycle infrastructure in our county, and a lot of great pedestrian infrastructure as well, to encourage us to walk, to bike, to run, to roll to work, to the store. Those safety improvements, we know that those help people feel more comfortable on their bikes and feel more comfortable walking. And we know that parents feel more comfortable if their kids have a green lane on their way to school, or a protected bike lane on their way to school, or an off the road way to get there. So especially out in the county in District 1, there are a lot of really awesome possibilities for that. And John advocates for all of that for us. Aside from the infrastructure piece, John's also advocated for the other pieces that go with it, the events that support it, the education that supports it, to help kids bike and walk more safely to school, to help parents understand the importance of helmets. John's forward thinking has also led to the purchase of the Santa Cruz branch line rail corridor. And he worked tirelessly to educate and inform constituents about the possibilities that Measure D could bring for our county. And we've continued to see how all of that advocacy has spread throughout the whole county. We indeed are seeing a lot of projects that support and encourage active transportation. And as we move forward in our efforts to mitigate the stresses on our planet by moving towards more active and sustainable transportation options, we do so knowing that John is a big proponent of that, and he will continue to support that along with us. So tonight, John needs your support, and I encourage you all to mark your pen, mark your ballot for John Leopold, and to contribute to his campaign as we finish up the last few days of it. Thank you all for your time. I have the very distinct pleasure now to introduce John Leopold. John was first elected to the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors in November of 2008. He represents the 1st District, which includes Live Oak, Soquel, and the Summit area. John previously served on the Cabrillo College Governing Board for 8 years. As a member of the Board of Supervisors, John has worked with the community to develop an effective vacation rental ordinance, sensible gun shop regulations, a set of budget policies that prioritize service to the community, and medical cannabis regulations. John led the board in banning fracking in Santa Cruz County, resulting in our county being the first in the state to do so. He has engaged hundreds of community members in developing community projects as part of the redevelopment agency and criminal justice reform efforts in the response to the state's prison realignment. John lives in Live Oak with his wife Teresa and has 2 daughters, Rose and Anna. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce John Leopold.
Thank you so much, Gina. I really appreciate all the kind words, and I'm humbled by all the speakers before me, because to me, they are my colleagues, partners in policies, and many of them are mentors to me. So thank you for all you had to say and for all of our work together. You know, I'm very proud of the work that we've accomplished together, because we've accomplished many environmental goals over the last 12 years. Our county was one of the first to develop a climate action strategy to really look at what was in front of us and what it is we needed to do. That led us to on a major push to reduce our emissions, and we've gotten them down below 1990 levels with things like the Monterey Bay Community Power, which is now the largest community choice energy company in the entire state of California, covering 5 counties. We've also added solar panels to all of our county buildings that have not only helped reduce emission, but saved tens of millions of dollars for the county. As has been mentioned, we were the first to ban fracking, and we inspired other counties to do it. Counties that many people said couldn't do it, but through the work, and I went and talked with organizers there, we were able to accomplish that throughout the Tri-County area. We've also been working on forward-thinking sustainable water policies, which has been a major issue here in our community. Plastics has also been something that has been at the forefront of our work together, from the plastic band bag to the most recent work around contact lenses, and just educating the community about the dangers of plastic pollution and how it affects our environment. And lastly, on making this place that we call home a safer place for people to be walking and biking. Things like the Arana Gulch Pathway, things like the East Cliff Parkway, sidewalks, bicycle lanes, green bicycle lanes. That has all been accomplished working together. But this election is not just about what I've done over the last 12 years with you, our work together. This is about what we can do in the next 4 years to build a more sustainable future for us here in Santa Cruz. You know, this past Tuesday, the board took action on a project that I brought to the board just about a year ago to have a climate action manager. Our board unanimously supported the proposal that I brought forward with Supervisor McPherson. And while we had started recruiting and we had to stop because of COVID, the impact of the most recent fires made it real clear that we can't stop and wait to fund a position that's going to be looking at the impacts of extreme weather events caused by climate change here in Santa Cruz County. And so we've developed a new Office of Resiliency Recovery. We've called that new position a resiliency officer, and that person will be in place in 30 to 45 days. That is very exciting, and it's going to be important for us as we update our climate action strategy and we begin to prepare for not only wildfire prevention, which has been very clear with the actions of the past 30 days or 45 days with the fires. The 11th most destructive fire in the history of California is here in our county, but also protecting us from possible disasters to come. Just last month, our board approved a local coastal plan with an innovative set of policies around sea level rise and how we adapt to that. Both by managed retreat and other tools to make sure that we protect people here in Santa Cruz County. On Friday, I'll be going before the Coastal Commission to share with them these strategies as part of a toolbox that counties throughout California could adopt and follow the lead that we have here in Santa Cruz. You know, the future, as we look at climate change, is also a future around one of the other major emission sources, which is the transportation. And we've gone full-fledged into a multimodal transportation policy. I've worked very hard to make sure that that happens. I've done a tremendous amount of work on the Regional Transportation Commission to bring in other voices to build the community consensus that we can't just depend on one mode of transportation. We have to look at all ways to get around. So in the future, we need to build out the electric infrastructure in our community. We've taken a great first step at the Transportation District, where we've agreed that all the buses for the Metro will be zero emission by 2040. We think we might be able to achieve that faster, but we've set the goal and we're on our way. We've ordered our first buses. We need to build out the electric car charging infrastructure. We will get help from the state. The governor's recent executive order about the ban on the sale of fossil fuel cars here by 2035 will make a difference, and will put state resources in for us to build out the charging network. So people you'll see more and more electric cars. I was proud to be the first elected official to invest in an electric car, and now that's the only thing we have here at my house. I've also led the effort on the purchase of the rail corridor because I saw the value in ensuring that we had a major transportation corridor to meet the transit needs of our community. And we've gone through a lot of battles, and I even have an opponent this time who that's a single issue. He's fighting having public transit on that corridor. But we have a plan, it's an award-winning plan to build an 8 to 12 foot wide trail next to that rail line. And it's under construction right now. In fact, we have 18 miles of that trail either under construction or under design right at this moment. It's going to be out to Live Oak by 2025. We are also in the final stages of a major transportation alternative analysis to figure out what kind of transit could be on that line. Will it be a bus? Will it be a train? Will it be light rail or something else? But finding a way to move people through our community with reliable travel times and zero emissions will really help our future here in Santa Cruz, not only in our contributions to lowering emissions in the community, but linking our community together because half the population of the county lives within 1 mile of those tracks. We've also pushed on other programs. We're in the final stages of completing a new bike and pedestrian path that will go along Soquel Creek. It should open around November or December. I led a planning process in Pleasure Point to have protected bike lanes along Portola Drive to help make that safe because that community really prioritizes safe biking and walking. It's one of the things along with surfing that define that neighborhood. And it's all part of a general plan to make our housing more environmentally sensitive. You know, over a couple of years ago, I led the process on our Sustainable Santa Cruz County Plan. And those were conversations involving hundreds of community members. And the goal was to think about development differently. Because when you can think about development differently, you can address the housing crisis, and environmental issues and support public transportation. And through those community dialogues, we were able to create a plan, the Sustainable Santa Cruz County Plan, that increases densities in good ways along our transit corridors. That will reduce water use. It will support our transit system and will ensure that we have a variety of housing to meet the housing needs of our community way into the future. I'm proud of that plan, and I'm glad that the environmental review of it has started now and will be completed in 2021, so we can start seeing these new housing developments built. An important part of that will also be ensuring that those new housing developments use all electric infrastructure. We don't need to be contributing to fossil fuel use here in Santa Cruz County. And if we're going to invest in new types of housing, we have to be thinking about the future, and electric is the future instead of depending on the old way of fossil fuels. So as we build these projects, we will be seeing them as green projects. One of the other parts of those housing developments also will be looking to make sure that they are energy sufficient. And if there are large projects, whether they be housing or some other development, I'm going to be pushing for them to have their own microgrids because they should be able to generate their power, especially if they're essential facilities. Ben Eickenhart mentioned about the work that we did together on Capitola Road for a new housing and healthcare project. When you're going to have a healthcare office that's going to meet the needs of almost 20,000 people, with a housing complex with 57 units, and a new dental office, you want to make sure that if PG&E can't get their act together and the power goes off, that the power can still be on this critical infrastructure in our community. And so we're working towards a microgrid at that project, and all new large projects should include that. Katherine O'Day mentioned about the work that we've done together on plastics. And I'm proud of the work that Santa Cruz has done to be a leader in the state of California. But there's more work to do. She mentioned that microfibers we're increasingly aware about the contribution that they make to our oceans and the danger they provide to ocean life, as well as us. Some studies point out that we probably ingest a credit card's worth of plastic each month because of the prevalence of microfibers. There are simple things that we can do. My daughter figured out a system when she was 8 years old at a science fair project. There are things that we can add to our washing machines, filters that we can add to our washing machines. And we are looking to launch a campaign that will require those filters in new washing machines. We're going to start with public education, but will lead to regulation. And we can be a leader in this effort. And then we can go after the sort of the big prize, the single-use bottle. The single-use plastic bottle is prevalent in our landfills. It's prevalent in our trash bins. It's prevalent in our streets and in our waterways, and we need to get rid of them. So there's a lot of work that we need to do. And this last year has been really important in terms of sharpening the debate, because the COVID crisis is really the climate change crisis at warp speed. It affects us all, but it disproportionately affects those least able, those of low income. And like the climate change debate, there are some that want to disregard the science. There are some that want to pretend it's not going to happen. There are some that would say, don't let it dominate your life. But we know that the COVID crisis is real, and we know that the climate change crisis is real. We need to act on it. And like the COVID crisis, we need to make sure that there is great equity in all that we do. Pauline mentioned that the beach flats is an area at risk. And that is primarily populated by the Latinx community. We have seen in the COVID crisis that the Latinx community is disproportionately affected. So as we think to strategies in the future, we need to make sure that we are taking care of all of our residents, not just some of our residents. I'm working with a group of BIPOC leaders right now to come up with a new platform, possibly a new commission, that can look at these issues and provide policy guidance for all of our departments. When we declared racism as a public health crisis, we identified that we need to look internally at our own policies and programs to ensure that there is not unconscious or implicit bias that is stopping those programs from meeting the needs of everyone in our community. As we think about environmental justice for the future, we need to keep some of those very same issues at the forefront to make sure that we really meet the needs of everyone. This race has a lot riding on it. My opponent has made a lot of promises, but he's really a single issue candidate who's committed to ending public transit on the rail corridor. He has a lot of friends that have a lot of money. They aren't from our district. Some of them aren't even from this community. And they're using it to attack me and the work that we have done together. I'm trying to run a positive campaign. I'm out there walking nearly every day. I was gratified by the nearly 70 volunteers that came out this past weekend to hang door hangers and spread the literature. And I'm going to keep on working for the next 27 days to make sure that we have a victory in November, not just for me, but for the community, and not just here in Santa Cruz, but for our entire country. Because this election is a critical election, and we're going to work to turn out as many people as possible to ensure that we take care of things in Santa Cruz and in the United States of America. So I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I'm humbled by the speakers who've spoken before me, and I'm happy to answer some questions if people have them. Over to you, Dan.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give anybody a chance to ask a question. There is a raise your hand function at the bottom of the screen for those who are attendees. So if you have any questions, now is the time. Okay, well, thank you so much, and thank you.
I think we have one from Wayne.
Oh, okay, excellent. You can unmute
Wayne, if you unmute yourself, and you could turn on your camera, and we'd see you.
Yeah, hi, John. The question I have is not environmental, but I'm on the board of the Seniors Council, and I'm really concerned about the Live Oak Senior Center, and I wondered if you've done any thinking about how we can solve that problem.
Well, thank you for asking, Wayne, and thanks for your work, many years of work that we've done together, and I wish you great success in your effort. I want to serve with you as a county supervisor.
Thank you.
San Benito would be wise to include you on the board of supervisors. The Live Oak Senior Center has been around for many years, and the school district, but it's been owned by the Live Oak School District. And as they are looking at their facilities, they designated that as a place where they want to both put the district office and build housing for their teachers and for their staff, which is really important so they can continue to have the best staff and teachers as possible. So I've been working with Community Bridges to identify a new site for the Meals on Wheels program. It needs to be a mid-county site so they can reach the entire county. We've looked at both county facilities and non-county facilities. There may be some opportunities that we're working on to ensure that program continues there. The Live Oak Senior Center plays lots of different roles. We've developed new community spaces, both the Sheriff Center at the new library annex that we're building next to the swim center to be able to meet sort of some of those needs. But the Meals on Wheels program and the senior programs that are there, I'd love to find a permanent home so they could be a permanent part of the Live Oak community. So it's work ongoing. We haven't completed it, but it's something that I'm going to continue working on after the election because it's critically important. In Live Oak, we have a greater number of seniors than in most of the places around Santa Cruz County. We look like the demographics of what Santa Cruz County will look like by 2050. It's already happening here in Live Oak. So if we can address that successfully, we will have unlocked a puzzle for the entire county.
Right.
Thanks for asking, and good luck with your race.
Thanks, you too. See you.
So